in the 70s, as opposed to yesterday was. I'll take it, but it was really hot yesterday.
You just stand there and breathe heavy.
Yeah.
Until the downpour.
But nothing. I didn't get a downpour.
We got a downpour.
What time?
It was late.
Between like 10 and 2-ish.
Oh, okay.
Overnight.
That might have happened.
Yeah.
Okay. And then things cooled off a little bit, right?
Cooled off. It was great.
So, and it's pretty comfortable out there right now. This story is really something. I say that all the crazy stories are where Christine is moving to, which is awesome.
Or where she's from.
It's either Florida or Mississippi.
Thank you all.
And this one actually isn't either one, to be honest. It's a Virginia story. A Sandston man was arrested after police say he vandalized a woman's car and pointed a shotgun at her, and then started waving the Confederate flag. This all over the fact that she parked in front of his house during a community-wide yard sale. You know what those yard sales are like if it's really well attended. There are cars parked on both sides and people loading things into their car, kids getting out, people all excited,
Yeah.
So these are things that happen at these community-wide yard sales. But this guy would have none of it. Here's the story off the CBS TV station there, Channel 6.
Sandston man is behind bars after Henrico police say he threatened a woman with a shotgun, and police say it was all over where she parked her car. It's a story that witnesses say involved yard sales, tree branches, and the Confederate flag.
She's 3 months old.
Marissa Turner cherishes every moment with her baby Ryan.
Because I'm like, say little, please.
But Saturday, a calm family breakfast at home took a wild turn.
Of course, yelling, screaming, cussing, just being very belligerent.
Police say her neighbor, Thomas Campbell, was upset with the woman for parking her car in front of his house on Treva Road. But Campbell allegedly took things further than a spat. According to police, Campbell stuffed tree branches inside the woman's car while she was at a nearby yard sale.
There are big tree branches with a lot of leaves on there that have just recently been cut off the trees. Yeah.
And then threatened her with a shotgun when she confronted him about the branches.
He was waving his gun out, and as soon as I saw that, I went back downstairs because I said, I'm not playing with this.
Multiple witnesses say Campbell even waved a Confederate flag around before officers arrived. Neighbors say there was a community-wide yard sale Saturday, so the streets were busier than normal. Still, Turner says the victim was legally parked on a public street.
It's the county property. Everybody deserves to be able to park wherever they want to park.
Henrico officers arrested Campbell and charged him with brandishing a firearm and vandalism since he damaged the victim's vehicle. Turner says the situation caused them to hunker down the rest of the day.
We, of course, just stayed inside because I was not going to go anywhere else.
Spoken with a member of Campbell's family who was at his house. They declined to comment for our story. Campbell remains behind bars at last check.
All right, well, there you go. And by the way, the woman was not black. She was white. Initially, when you hear the flag coming out, the Confederate flag, you think, well, it must be a race thing. But it wasn't. Both the parties were white. One was white with a kid, and the other one was white and angry.
She parked in front of his driveway or just in front of his house?
In front of the house. Just like in front of the lawn. So it's not like... and you just have to picture him pushing the branches into the vehicle.
Why?
I thought I don't get it. I thought it was very interesting and watching the reports over the last few days about the gun bills that were proposed. Of course, it involves the no-fly list, and then there's gun shows and internet sales of guns and background checks, all of that. So I think there were 4 bills that were proposed in the U.S. Senate, and none of them passed. But watching the TV reports, depending on which network you were watching, was how the story was framed. And you call it what, Christine? Is it your lead sentence? You're like a headline in a
your lead
in a story, like the headline in a newspaper. A radio story or newspaper story has the lead, and that is that sentence. It kind of gives you a little taste of who, what, when, why, and where. All of that, the 5 W's. But it's interesting when you hear, when these depending on the network, one would say, basically, thankfully, the U.S. Senate has rejected these gun control bills, and then another story would lead basically saying, can you believe, despite what happened in Orlando, that the Senate has gotten nothing done on the gun issues? And all 4 bills were voted down.
And
Surprise?
both of those leads are bad leads.
Both are bad. I mean, because it's not
Those
taking
are not journalistic
it's
leads.
it's not taking the story from just a neutral stance.
Right.
It's giving your opinion, and it just kills me how these cable news networks, from CNN to MSNBC and Fox News, each of them with their own different lead, each being the wrong lead in terms of journalism. I think, anyway.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. I'm surprised though the Senate, I guess, because they were voted. They needed 60. That was what it is, right? And they consider that a supermajority. So,
yeah. But don't you think though that this really had nothing to do with passing any gun rights at all, any gun changes or gun laws?
It was an election.
It was an election deal. This is completely political. And when this was, it started last week with the filibuster, right? And Democrats were really pushing to get a bill for a vote. They wanted a vote. And the reason you want to vote is because you want to be able to say, look, they voted this down. All you people are so emotionally attached to the story in Orlando, and look at what these angry, mean Republicans have done. They continue to back the NRA. And on the Republican side, they can't, even if there's a thought that maybe, background checks might not be a terrible idea in some cases, it might weed out some of the mentally deranged. And maybe allowing terrorists to buy guns in the United States probably isn't a bad idea, but how do we get there? Because it seems U.S. citizens are mistakenly placed on this list. So they have to be careful to take care of their base. But it does seem when these stories hit that there's a majority of people in the United States that are sensitive and are really looking, that don't own guns, that are really looking for more restrictions. So political?
Absolutely.
you think it's a majority?
I do. Oh, I do it. A majority of Americans, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the polls show that it is. And not the majority of Republicans, but the majority of Americans. And when you have these Newtown stories and these stories like Orlando, it even kind of, it makes its way into that moderate middle group that normally supports gun rights, but you hear them saying things like, well, listen, I'm a Second Amendment person, but I do believe background checks is somewhere where we probably should go. Or I don't believe that terrorists should be able to buy guns. And
who argues that?
But the
though,
problem
against
is, but the argument is, the Republicans argue it, and the NRA argues it, but they're not arguing that. That's where the argument is positioned. It's not about terrorists, really. It's about this list of people that without due process, we're putting on a list. We're putting them on this list where they can't buy guns. Now, there are really bad terrorists on there. But who else is on that list? What other American citizens are on that list that have not gone through any form of due process? It's just somebody felt they were somebody that shouldn't have a gun. Or for those that are on there by mistake. That becomes the argument. So it depends on who's talking about it, how you lead with the argument. And that's not just with reporters, but it's with the political people as well. It's crazy, right? It's been on the crazy side. On the line is Michael in Frankfurt. Mike, what do you think about it?
Hey, good morning, Bill. The concerns that I have are, first of all, that there are honest people, quote unquote, that are probably on this no-fly list.
Yeah.
So that becomes a legal issue because there's no way of getting off that no-fly list.
Right.
Now, if things got a little more legalistic, a little more fair, it would be a whole different ballgame. The other thing is, every one of these tragedies, and I hate to bring it up, but every one of these tragedies occurs in a gun-free zone. Now, I don't say that everybody should carry guns, but those that don't choose to use or carry firearms have no rights to tell me that I cannot protect myself. That's the issue that's going across the United States.
Well,
If you don't want it, that's fine. But don't tell me that I can't protect myself.
Yeah, in reality, this club was not. It's not the government's coming in. It's the club owners saying no guns allowed, and they check people at the door. But the guy at the door had a gun. I mean, he had a gun. he was there and he was checking the door and he got into a shooting match with the guy. And the deviant, I don't want to say his name, he's the one that actually kind of won out. He ended up inside and he took hostages. But there were guns there. I mean, there was at least a gun there. And I even in the NRA, though, Mike says that having everybody in that club with guns, if you're drinking, you should not be carrying a firearm. And that's from the NRA.
I don't have a problem with that, Bill.
Yeah.
Not one bit.
But you're right on the side. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I need to deal with that gun in a bar. All right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the situation is such that if you're going to live a lifestyle. First of all, we're all Americans. Okay? I could have gone into that venue and I could have had probably a good time. All right? So could you.
Yeah.
So could your crew. All right? We're not saying that. But if you're going to have a situation like that, where is the security? Where are the responsible people to protect that venue?
Yeah. Well, the problem here is that these places only can afford so much security, right? And it had never been an issue there before. So they have a guy there who's an off-duty police officer who has a gun. And the problem is that this guy came in at the perfect time at like 2 o'clock in the morning when you expect people to be leaving, not coming in. So he wasn't on his guard. The police officer that was the security guard wasn't on his guard. This was like the perfect storm. In another situation, if it had been earlier in the night, who knows? The security guard might have been paying a little more attention, and who knows? He might have shot and killed this guy. But the time was the perfect time to do this, I'm afraid.
Well, we can talk the perfect storm. We can talk a lot of things.
Yeah.
What I have is we know all about the shooter. Oh, we know, okay, supposedly.
Yeah.
But we haven't heard a thing about the guy at the door.
That's a good point. We've not heard anything about that guy, except for they said that he had a gun and he was an off-duty police officer. He engaged in a shootout, and we don't know really any more about him. All right, Michael, thanks. I appreciate it. Listen, at the end of the day, I'm with you. It's the minute these stories hit, these tragedies hit, we react by, we're going to have to fix this. We got to fix it, and the only way to fix it is to turn to Washington and have them pass more laws that currently aren't followed by people who don't follow laws in the first place. Tom in Little Falls, quickly, go ahead.
Yes, quickly. On the no-fly list, one person whose name was on there was Senator Ted Kennedy. Took him 6 months to get off. Nobody knows why he was on there. Nobody knows why anybody is on there or who puts them on there.
Well, I hope he's not on there still.
No, I think he isn't anymore.
Yeah,
but
right.
It did take him 6 months to get it off, and he was a senator. Imagine how long it's going to take an ordinary citizen to get their name off.
Well, even beyond the mistakes, you have people that are U.S. citizens on that list. How can you prevent a U.S. citizen? How can you take away a constitutional right based on
flying is
you're surmising
guns, though.
Guns, yeah, based on your surmising that this person could be, because if he had committed crimes, he would be in jail, right?
In this particular case, though, with this individual, the FBI talked to him 3 times, and he had communication with a suicide bomber. I can't remember what the other things were, but it wasn't like they just put him on the list because they didn't like him, or a neighbor complained that he played his music too loud.
He wasn't on the list, Jeff. He wasn't. I don't think he was on a no-fly list. This has nothing to do with it.
He got his gun. Yeah,
this is all the guns. This is all this latest. People died. And Congress is stepping up and saying we must do something, so we're going to pass new gun laws. All it has to do with the fact that the guy had a gun, he wasn't on a no-fly list.
Well, I guess my question is then why wasn't he on a list like that?
I think the one thing we're not talking about is the fail by the FBI. How do you interview this guy 3 times, and people are coming out and saying, we told you this was what was going to happen. How aren't you just watching a guy that's threatening he's going to do something, keeping an eye on him? If he was threatening the president, we'd be watching him, wouldn't we? So I think the FBI fail out of this is something that should be. But, it is what it is. Instead, we're just going to pass gun laws that will affect honest, law-abiding citizens. I got a break. Hold on tight. Coming right back. Thanks, Tom. 6:53 WIBX.